This segment looks at the role of the executive search consultant from the perspective of the candidate and the client. To assist us today, we are joined by Kevin Hardy, founder and principal of HGI, and John Mollett, principal search consultant at HGI. Both Kevin and John are well credentialed to advise on this topic. Kevin had 20 years' experience in the Australian Public Service before establishing his own consultancy in health leadership and organisational development. He is the architect of the HGI's business model and is passionate about building networks for leaders, for knowledge sharing and learning. He has unparalleled networks with CEOs and board chairs, nationally and globally. He has personally conducted many senior search assignments. John Mollett, my esteemed colleague, has Chief Executive and Chief Operating Officer experience in the public health system in Australia and New Zealand. His value in executive search and recruitment is his in-depth knowledge and experience of systems and organisations from the inside. John has been a tertiary hospital CEO with responsibility for managing and recruiting to the full range of professional clinical leadership positions. Welcome, Kevin and John. John, putting on your CEO hat, what value does an executive search consultant bring to an executive appointment initially? Why use an agency?
Well, there are a number of reasons, Christine. I think the first of them, obviously, is the consultant's ability to provide a field of candidates from a national, international list, which it's unlikely that any particular HR division that as a client your division would have. So the first thing I think is extensive reach. The second thing a consultant brings is that between you and the consultant, you get an understanding of the kind of person that you're looking for, the kind of cultural fit. So when you get a field of candidates from the consultant, what you can expect is not only are they technically competent or professionally competent, but they're also most likely to be a fit for the organisation. The third thing that you'll get from the consultant is their ability to sell your organisation. Now, the reality is that for most jobs, it's difficult for the consultant, it would be almost impossible for the consultant to attract the right field of candidates unless they could sell them on the organisation, so that they need to work with you as the client to get a real understanding and a feel for the organisation, the culture of the organisation, where it's up to in its stage of development. And then from that, look at the other members of the executive team, the other members of the group, and think about how to work that story around any particular candidate. So you're getting an understanding of an extensive international field, you're getting cultural fit, you're getting an ability to sell the organisation. So they're three things that are of significant interest to you as the client.
And Kevin, from the executive search consultant's perspective, what value do you bring as the executive search consultant to the client?
Well, there's a little bit of overlap between what John said and what I'll say. I think we're a trusted advisor, and when you've got that level of trust, the client is looking for you to be able to get behind the client's application, to be able to understand what they really offer, and to provide, I think, intelligent insight. So it'll help them assess each candidate and what claims they have for a role. I think what you offer to the client is a level of street smarts that you may not get, as John said, with an internal function. You really want to be able to understand and know how a candidate might fit the role and the culture of the organisation. So you being able to read that and being able to sort of register the fit is critical, and that becomes part of the trusted advisor contribution as well. I think you have to have the right networks. You've got to have the reach and the connectivity, and the client looks for that as value because you can go beyond what anyone else can go, reaching deep into systems to pluck people that they may not even expect could have an interest. And this gives you credibility with the client, and I think they that becomes a major value add for them. You have to know the marketplace, you have to know the market itself, and the trick is to be up to date, to have real currency, so that when you talk, you are adding extra information, extra data, extra intelligence for the client to be able to make a judgment in the end. So what you're really doing is building a quality relationship and a level of trust that you bring because you've got insight no one else has. And also the capacity to be able to attract passive job seekers, people who aren't necessarily looking for a role, but you know that they are there, you know that you can reach down and ask the questions that might get them interested. I think that's the value that we provide to the client.
John, your thoughts now as an experienced HGI search consultant.
Well, I think there are a number of reasons why a candidate should be happy to be using an agency. The first thing is that once they've got a good relationship with a consultant, they'll get honesty. So there are many times when people see jobs advertised and think intuitively, that's the kind of job for me. Now, it's only when you've been able to talk it through with a candidate and a consultant, and you've got behind not only the technical competencies required, but the culture of the organisation, the management style of the particular client, that you can be honest with the candidate and say, yep, I think you really should give it a go, or no, I don't think you should. I think I think that this is not the job for you, and explain the reasons why. I think also that once you've got that trusted consultant and candidate relationship, then you can talk to the candidate quite openly about opportunities that are going to present themselves. Now, many times candidates would like to go for roles, but they have other pressures on them, personal pressures, professional pressures, and being able to talk it through with the consultant and get a time frame in mind of when they might be available and what type of roles they'd be prepared to look for, what type of locations they'd be prepared to go to, and have that discussion up front and work and have that discussion not only with the consultant and the potential candidate, but the candidate with their family and whoever else they need to confer with, so that when the role's triggered off, then they're close to thinking, right, I'm ready to go. So I think there are two good reasons why a candidate should feel comfortable about working with an agency. The other reason, obviously, is that the consultant, the executive search consultant, will have a really good idea of what's likely to become available, not only locally, nationally, but internationally. And there are many times when candidates would love to test themselves in other waters, as it were, but they don't know about the opportunities. They don't know about the upsides and downsides of applying for a role in the UK or Canada. And that's where the relationship with the consultant comes in. The consultant can talk them through it and take away a lot of the mystique and then help them come to some decision about whether it's the right thing for them to do, the right thing for their family to do, or whether it's just something that was a pipe dream, but it's not going to work for them. So there's some of the reasons I think why a candidate should feel comfortable about working with a consultant or an executive search consultant.
Kevin, from your long experience as a trusted advisor to many senior executives, what value does the executive search consultant provide candidates?
Well, the client wants to be able to trust who we are and want to be able to trust the advice that we actually give them. So we need to be able to provide intelligence about people, really represent their claims, but to be able to help the client make a proper judgment about someone's claims for a role. We also need to know the marketplace. If we don't know the marketplace, we're no value to the client whatsoever. So we have to be up to date, we've got to be current around our knowledge of people, and we have to be able to know who suits a role, who doesn't suit a role, who's got the performance track record, who's got the leadership cred to be able to be a suitable and appropriate applicant in order to be shortlisted for an interview and possibly be successful in getting the role itself. So we need street smarts here. We really need to know who will fit the culture, who will fit the role. So without us being able to, if we can't sense and taste, smell what these roles are about, and for the client to trust us that we do, then we're not adding the value that we need to add as search consultants. We need also to be able to know whether someone's really got a track record of success, whether they've delivered and they therefore could deliver for the client whose role we're trying to fill. So that whole being able to assess their track record and to be able to really test whether or not they have achieved what they've said they've achieved is really important to the client. So we need to know who's out there, we need to know who suits a role, and we need to know how to interest them in a role, even if they're not looking for a role. So we need to know who's out there, who suits a role, and we need to know how to interest them in a role. That's the value we add. I think our role is also to care about people. So that may sound a little bit soft, but in fact it isn't, because we have an outcome in mind and they actually know when you're actually being honest and truthful and that you are concerned about them. It's a big effort for a candidate to apply for a job. That's a lot of emotional energy, and they want to know that you represent them, that you are genuine in your conversations with them. And we stay in touch with candidates consistently over time, but only when we really want them to apply for a particular role. So we don't ring up just for having a chat, but we keep the piece of string attached to them so that we keep that connection going. And they're valuable to us, and I think we're valuable to them as a trusted advisor.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin and John, for your insights and thoughts today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Pleasure.